Mr. Speaker. Unfortunately, this Republican-controlled Congress has been one of the least productive Congresses in modern times. Recently, the Speaker of the House actually said, and I quote, "We have done our work." This year, we've passed only 56 bills. That's sad and that's wrong. And this month, we're in session here on this floor for only 8 days. Important issues continue to pile up, unresolved, unanswered, and yet tomorrow we're getting ready to leave for the rest of the year, even as the Senate will continue to work on behalf of the American people. The list of what we have not done is much longer than what we have passed. We need to stay here and get the work of the American people done. We haven't taken up a jobs and infrastructure bill. We could do that next week. We have not passed a long-term budget deal that tackles the big issues that we face. We have not voted on comprehensive immigration reform, despite the fact that a majority would support immigration reform. All we need to do is bring it to the floor. We could do that next week. We haven't done our work to extend unemployment compensation for 1.3 million Americans who will lose their benefits on December 28. Yet we're going to leave this body having failed to act to protect the livelihood of 1.3 million Americans. That's just wrong. We haven't considered raising the minimum wage, despite the economic boon that it would mean to our economy, giving millions of working-class people more purchasing power, supporting business and supporting economic growth. And we have a farm bill, a bipartisan farm bill. Sure, it's got some problems. I don't know how everybody would vote on it, but it ought to come to the floor of the House for a yes or no vote. We could do that next week. The list goes on. Unfortunately, it is completely fair to characterize this Republican-led House as a do-nothing Congress. Sometimes, though, it seems as though the things that we have actually done have only made things worse. In March, we allowed the harmful across-the-board sequester cuts to go into effect. Nobody here tried to stop them on our side. We tried to stop them. Nobody did anything on the other side. Those draconian cuts went into effect, slowed economic growth, cost hundreds of thousands of Americans their jobs. In October, the gridlock and dysfunction shut down the federal government for 2 weeks, the first such shutdown in 2 decades. That cost this economy $24 billion. We can't let that happen in the future. You know, I'm only a freshman, just finishing my first year in Congress, but I can tell you one thing I know: this is no way to run this government. We've got to get back to legislating, doing the work of the American people the way the framers of this government intended it to be done. We can just kind of go back. Some of you might remember Schoolhouse Rock, how a bill becomes a law. The House passes a bill, the Senate does its work, passes a bill, we go to conference, we work out the differences and send that on to the President for his signature or for a veto. That's the way we legislate, yet we continue to lurch from crisis to crisis and not let the will of the American people be manifest in the laws that we write. My constituents and all Americans deserve a Congress that is serious about the work of the American people and ready to get to work, to grow our economy, to support manufacturing, to strengthen the middle class. And I'm ready to work in a bipartisan fashion. I think most of us are here to take on these big problems that our country faces. Now is not the time for more dithering or delay. Now is certainly not the time for a vacation. Look, I'd love to be able to go home and spend the next couple of weeks with my family. You know, we spend a lot of time away from home. But the folks that we represent expect us to get our work done. So I, Mr. Speaker, am one who am willing to just stay here. Let's come back to work on Monday, and let's stay here until we get this important work done. Let's take the Make It in America agenda to support American manufacturing. Let's bring it to the floor. If you don't want to vote for it, don't vote for it. But we ought to consider these important pieces of legislation that are important to our economy and not leave town without taking up the important work that we're charged with doing. I represent Flint, Saginaw, Bay City, older industrial cities that help the manufacturing base of our economy. They depend on the Congress to do the work that we were sent here to do. We shouldn't go home. We should stay here and finish our work. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman's time has expired.